All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Be seated. Madam Court Officer, you may call the case.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is case BC 2020-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Veseli, Recep Selimi, and Jakub Krasniqi.
I remind the parties that pursuant to a change in the sitting schedule in this matter, there will be no third session today or Thursday, and the hearings will adjourn at 1 p.m. I note that there is a matter regarding the 13 September 2023 transcript that the panel will address before we start with the testimony of W03880. The panel recalls that on 11 and 13 September 2023, W03827 testified before the panel. On 11 September 2023, the panel admitted 3827's witness statements under Rule 143, Paragraph 2. On 13 September 2023, the Veseli defense noted that the legal arguments pertaining to this matter had taken place in private session and requested that the transcript be classified as public. The panel subsequently ordered the SPO to propose redactions, if any, in writing. On 15 September 2023, the SPO submitted its proposed redactions. The defense proposed alternative redactions. In light of the parties' submissions, the panel grants the request for redactions proposed on page 7973, line 6, and rejects the remainder of the proposed redactions. The panel also orders the reclassification as public of the remainder of the parties' legal submissions involving Rule 143, subparagraph 2, made on 13 September 2023 at transcript page 7946, line 11, to page 7977, line 17. This concludes the panel's oral order. I note that the accused are all present in court today. We will begin hearing the evidence of prosecution witness W03880. We are in public session, and Madam Court Usher, please bring the witness in. Prosecution time estimate? Same?
Yes, the same, Your Honor.
1.5 hours?
Yes.
Okay. Any change in the defense time estimates?
We would likely be less than our estimate, but we'll wait to see how matters develop.
Thank you.
I notified the panel last week. We've gone from 1.5 hours down to 30 minutes, I believe, Your Honor. Thank you.
Likely to be less than our estimate, Your Honor, but keeping an eye on it.
Good morning, witness. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
The court usher will now provide you with the text for the solemn declaration which you are asked to take pursuant to our rules. Please read the document, look at the document, and then read it aloud.
Svjestan značaja ovog svedočenja,
Conscious of the significance of my testimony and my legal responsibility, I solemnly declare that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that I shall not withhold anything which has come to my knowledge.
Witness, today we will start your testimony, which is expected to last approximately 9 hours. As you may know, the prosecution will ask you questions first. Once they are done, the defense has the right to ask questions of you, and members of the panel might also ask questions of you. The prosecution estimate for your examination is 1.5 hours. The defense estimates that it will need 7 hours. As regards each estimate, we hope that the counsel will be judicious in the use of their time. The panel may allow redirect examination if conditions for it are met. Witness, please try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you don't understand a question, feel free to ask counsel to repeat the question or tell them you don't understand and they will clarify. Also, try to indicate the basis of your knowledge of facts and circumstances that you will be asked about. In the event you are asked by the SBO to attest to some corrections made regarding your statements, you are reminded to confirm on the record that the written statement, as corrected by the list of corrections, accurately reflects your declaration. Please also speak into the microphone and wait 5 seconds before answering a question, and speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. In case we do not finish your testimony today, please note that you are not allowed to discuss the content of your testimony outside of the courtroom with anyone until you have finished giving evidence. If any person asks you questions outside the court about your testimony, please let us know. Please stop talking if I ask you to or if I hold up my hand, which means I need to give you further instruction. If you feel the need to take breaks, please make an indication and an accommodation will be made. Do you understand all of that?
okay.
Yes, all right.
We will begin with the prosecution's questions of you. They will begin over here. The gentleman over here will be the prosecutor asking you questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, witness. We've met before, but I will introduce myself again. I'm Andrew Boyle, and I am here on behalf of the Specialist Prosecutor's Office, and I'll be asking you questions for the next hour and a half. As I explained during your preparation session, a few days ago, rather than asking you questions about every relevant issue that you may have information about, it may be possible to admit some of your prior statements containing such information into evidence. In order to do so, there are a number of procedural steps to follow, which I will turn to after establishing your identity. Mr. Witness, can you state your name?
Nebojša Radošević.
Nebojša Radošević.
Radošević.
Nebojša Radošević. My name is Nebojša Radošević.
What is your date of birth?
17.
17th September 1966.
Crnogorac, srpsko.
Montenegrin, but I'm a citizen of Serbia. So usually I write in forms I'm a Montenegrin by ethnicity, but I'm a national of Serbia.
Court officer, I would like to call up 070725-TR, Part 1, Red 2, and in Serbian, that is 070725-TR, Part 1, Red. Mr. Radosevic, do you see the document on your screen?
Da.
Yes.
It is the first part of an interview between you and the SPO in December of 2019. Do you remember meeting with SPO members in December 2019 and being asked questions about what happened to you and others in 1998?
Da, okay.
Yes, right.
And court officer, could you call up SPOE 000-78810 to SPOE 000-78818-ST revised red. And Mr. Radosevic, do you see the document on your screen?
Da.
Yes.
By the ULEX police on 19 April 2011. Do you remember meeting with the ULEX police in 2011 when they asked you questions about what happened to you in 1998?
Da.
Yes.
Court officer, could you please call up SITF 00009201 dash 00009206, red 2, at page 00009206. And the Serbian translation is at the same number with a dash ST red. Mr. Radosevic, do you see the document on your screen?
Da, okay.
Yes, right.
Testimony that you provided to the Specialist Prosecution Office of the Republic of Kosovo in January 2012. If the court officer could please scroll to the last page. Oh, sorry, you're already on there. Mr. Radosevic, on the last page at the bottom left, do you see your name written there?
Pišu, veli.
Yes, it's written there.
At your signature.
Da. Aha, ovo.
Yes, oh, this, yes, right, yes.
And is it correct that you met with the Specialist Prosecution Office of the Republic of Kosovo in January 2012, and they asked you questions about what happened to you in 1998?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Radosevic, do you recall reading these prior statements a few days ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you recall me providing you with an opportunity to provide clarifications in relation to these statements?
Да.
Yes.
Do you recall that you made a number of clarifications to these prior statements?
Да.
Yes.
Do you recall these clarifications and corrections being included in a note which was read back to you?
Да.
Yes.
Subject to the corrections set out in that note, is the information provided in the documents I referred you to today accurate and truthful to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Tačno tako, prema mojim
Yes. Exactly. To the best of my knowledge and my belief.
And subject to the corrections set out in the note, do the documents I referred you to today accurately reflect what you would say if you were examined about the events recorded therein?
Pa da, mislim, ovo...
Well, yes, right, yes, that's it.
Your Honors, I'd like to seek admission of the prior statements which I have referenced, and I'd like to ask for the English, Albanian, and Serbian of each to be admitted, the relevant ERNs of which are 070725-TR-ET, Part 1, Red 2, and Parts 2 and 3. In Serbian, that is 070725-TR, Part 1, Red, and Parts 2 and 3. And in Albanian, 070725-TR-AT, Part 1, Red 2, and Parts 2 and 3. The next statement is SPOE 00078810-00078819 red in English. In Serbian, SPOE 00078810-SPOE 00078818-ST revised red. And in Albanian, same number, that's the final number being 78819-AT red. And the final statement is SITF 00009206 red 2 in English. In Serbian, SITF 00009206-ST red. And in Albanian, SITF 00009201-SITF 00009206-AT red 2 in Albanian. As indicated in the Rule 154 motion for this witness, I also seek to tender the associated exhibits for these statements. The first of which is 070724-070724 and the same in Albanian with an AT at the end. And the second of which is U003-8552-U003-8690 at U003-8645-U003-8645. Again, the same in Albanian with AT at the end. I also seek admission of note, the preparation note, which is at 116022 and 116028, which contains the clarifications made during the witness preparation session as concerns the proposed Rule 154 statement.
Well, there is, excuse me, Judge, there is some difficulty with the 2011 statement. If we look back at the interview with the SPO on the 2011 statement, and I'm reading from 070725 ET Part 1, page 8, lines 1 to 24. This, number one, the witness didn't remember giving this statement. Number two, the witness never signed the statement, and the SPO is asking the court to attest to the accuracy of this interview, where the witness himself has said that the Tanyud reporter, who's allegedly there, the witness maintains was not there. So it calls into question the accuracy of this statement at all. And I'm a little perplexed that the prosecution is advancing a statement on behalf of this witness that the witness disagrees with, at least in part, and that was not signed by him.
Thank you. Mr. Emerson, anything? Anything?
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
If I could respond briefly. Thank you, Your Honor. So I think the counsel might have stated that the witness didn't remember being, the journalist being there, but it's the lawyer that indeed he didn't recall being there. But it's incorrect to say that he didn't recall the statement. If you look at the first part of his SPO interview at pages 8 and 9, he clearly states that he recalls giving the interview and disputes the fact that that a lawyer who was indicated to be there was there, and also even though he disputes some of the items contained within that statement, has had not only an opportunity in the SPO statement, but also an opportunity in clarifications to correct those mischaracterizations.
All right.
To that, Judge. I just point to the SPO interview itself, which is, as I said, it's the same ERN number, page 8, line 1 to 24, and line 12, he said, "I am telling you immediately that I don't remember this statement." Now, if we turn ahead to the next page, and again, this is ERN number 070725, TRET Part 1, lines 4 to 20, the SPO asked, "Now, do you recall in what way the lawyer from Tanyud participated in that interview in Belgrade?" Answer, "I would like to repeat one more time, the man was not here at all." Now, this witness has not signed this document. He obviously takes serious issue with the recitation in this document that a Tanyud lawyer was there. So again, I reiterate, I question how the SPO can advance the veracity of this statement when the witness itself does not. He takes issue with the fact that this Talmud lawyer was there, among other things, but that's the most glaring issue.
We decided this issue in our 154 decision. There is adequate affirmation on this, and we will admit all of the reference documents in English, Albanian, and Serbian translated, and the notes. And we will assign a P number to all of them, Madam Court Officer.
Your Honor, the first statement 070725, part 1, the exhibit P 488.1, and the number will be assigned to the Albanian and Serbian versions of it. Part 2 of 070725 will be P 488.2. Part 3 will be exhibit P 488.3. And then the next statement, SPOE 00078810 to SPOE 00078819. All the versions, Serbian, English, and Albanian, will be assigned exhibit number P 489. SITF 00009201 to 00009206, and the corresponding Serbian and Albanian versions will be exhibit number P 450. P 490. Then associated exhibit 070724 to 070724 ET and AT will be exhibit P 491. U0038552 to U0038690 at page U0038645 to U0038645, and the Albanian translation will be exhibit P 492. And lastly, the preparation note, ERN 116022 to 116028 will be exhibit P 493. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. On 6th October, the SPO circulated a proposed summary of this witness's now admitted Rule 154 testimony to the panel, the defense, and the victim's counsel. We have not received any objection to the summary, and therefore, before commencing the supplementary questioning, I will provide a brief summary of Mr. Radosevic's evidence contained in the documents that have just been admitted.
You may proceed.
Mr. Radosevic was a journalist for Tanjug beginning in 1996. On 18 October 1998, he was traveling by car with a Tanjug photographer named Vladimir Dobrisic in the vicinity of Magura when they were stopped at a KLA checkpoint. They were then detained at 4 places over 41 days, including a detention site in Sedlare and what Mr. Radosevic believes is Klečka. While Mr. Radosevic was detained in Sedlare, a KLA member pressed a rifle into his mouth and eye while demanding he identify the KLA logo and speak Albanian. While Mr. Radosevic was detained in Klečka, he was threatened with a knife, and he and Mr. Dobrisic were hit. Also, while detained in Klečka, Radosevic would hear the screams of 2 Serbian policemen who were being beaten. Mr. Radosevic was eventually told that he and Mr. Dobrisic had been convicted of traveling in KLA territory without permission and without press identification on their car and sentenced to 60 days imprisonment. Mr. Radosevic did not have the opportunity to participate in any judicial process that reached these alleged convictions. Mr. Radosevic and Mr. Dobrisic were released on 27 November 1998, under the claim that they had been granted an amnesty for Albanian Flag Day. Mr. Radosevich, in your SPO statement that was just admitted, you stated that you had given an interview in 2018 to a publication called Vice. Do you recall that?
It should be 2018. The interview with Vice.
I apologize if I misstated the year. I meant to say 2018.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
No.
Certainly it doesn't really make sense. I did give an interview to Vice, to a friend, so I did provide that interview.
And court officer, I would like to call up on the screen 114275 to 114289. And in English, it's the same with ET at the end. Mr. Radosevich, on the screen, you'll see a document that states that it is from vice.com and has the title, "I was a KLA captive for 41 days." Do you recognize this as the article containing your interview with Vice magazine?
That's it.
I do. This is it.
And can you describe for the court what were the circumstances that led you to providing this interview to Vice magazine?
Izvinite, ne razumem, ali ajde da okolnosti.
Excuse me, I don't really understand your question, but let me tell you. We were sitting at a cafe. We were outside the Tanyuk building in a cafe, and the man asked me if I was willing to provide an interview. Is that the answer to your question? What were the circumstances where I gave the interview? So this young man asked me to give an interview. We went out of the building. We sat there a little while, and I gave an interview. I don't know what else you want me to say.
That's sufficient, thank you. Can you tell the court what you discussed in that interview?
Pa o tome šta nisi...
Well, it was about what I had experienced in those 41 days there. We knew each other from before. He was in Pristina as well in 98 and 99. I think at that time he worked for B92 or something like that. But that doesn't really matter. We knew each other. And then we met in Belgrade, and he asked me to give an interview for some reason. I suppose that the office he worked for felt that that would be interesting. So I told him basically the same things I told you. More or less, that's it.
Did you discuss in that interview aspects of your detention, Mr. Dobrosic's detention, your treatment, and your release?
Mislim, samo o tome smo i...
Well, that's the only thing we generally talked about. As it says here, this one portion of it, I told him what happened to us, how we were released. And of course, we also chatted a bit, how are you doing, and how are you doing, and so on, But generally, we talked about this.
Thank you. Your Honors, I'd like to tender this for admission.
No objection, Judge.
No objection.
None.
114275 to 114289 is admitted and will be assigned prosecution exhibit number.
Your Honors, that will be Exhibit P 494.
Thank you. Go on.
Thank you, Your Honors. Mr. Radosevich, in your statements that were admitted a few minutes ago, you stated that after you were detained, you were told you were being investigated for espionage, and that you and Mr. Dobricic were then told that you had been convicted of traveling in KLA territory without a permit and of not having a press sign on your car and sentenced to 60 days. And I'd like to ask you a few more questions about that. Can you please tell the court, during the time of your detention at Sedlare, were you held in the same room as Mr. Dobricic or in separate rooms?
Pravim pauzu zato što je gospodin...
I'm pausing because the Honorable Judge said I should pause before I reply. So the first
je bio
10 days I was in one room and Mr. Dobricic was in another. 10 or 11 days, plus or minus 1 day. That was, let me explain everything. That was some kind of medical office. There was a refrigerator there. There was equipment, dental equipment. There were some pictures on the walls, like in every doctor's office. I was in one doctor's office. Dobricic was in another one. That could have been a waiting room because it was a bigger room than the room where I was. And after about 10 or 11 days, we were both put in the same room, the room where Dobricic was held. Okay?
Understood. And after you were placed in the same room together in Sedlare, were you then held together for the remainder of the time that you were detained, that is, up until your release?
Da, svih 20...
Yes, the remaining 30 days or so, 30 or 31, plus or minus that 1 day, the two of us were together. From Sedlare, when I was taken out of my room and transferred me to the room where Dobricic was, we spent the rest of the time together.
And after you were put in the same room together, did the two of you discuss what had happened to each of you when you were held separately for that first 10 days?
Da, naravno da jesu.
Yes, of course.
And did you ask Mr. Dobricic if he had been questioned by the KLA?
Jesam, naravno.
Yes, of course, I asked him whether they had come to his room. He said there had been some 4 or 5 men, so the same men who were in my room. First, they went to his room, and then they came to mine on the same day.
And did you talk to him about how many times he had been questioned?
Ono što je on meni rekao,
Well, what he told me, there was this one occasion at the same time that he was questioned. Oh, well, when he was questioned, I was too. It lasted about 10 minutes or so. As I've already told you, maybe they were intrigued by me because I was from Pristina or whatever, I don't know. but then, so they asked me about, they questioned me about half an hour to 40 minutes, whereas in his case it was a bit shorter.
10 minuta kod mene su.
So, to recap, they spent about 10 minutes with Dobricic, and with me, when they came over, they spent about 30 to 40 minutes.
And did he tell you any of the topics that they questioned him on?
Rekao je otprilike.
Well, he said roughly what you mentioned or what I mentioned earlier, so that he was informed that we had been accused of spying because we didn't have the appropriate sign on our car that we were press. After that, they came to my room. It lasted a bit longer. Then they discussed, there was talk about the political situation, what Milosevic was doing to the Albanians, what the Serbs were doing to Albania. So mainly it was political talk about what Milosevic was doing to Albanians and so on. And it was similar with me. I can continue or I can end here. Whatever you please.
Any other topics than political topics that they asked Mr. Dobricic or yourself about? Please continue.
Da, u redu, što se dobri.
Yes, all right. As for Mr. Dobricic, I don't know whether they asked him anything else except for what I already told you. They told him what we were accused of. They discussed the political situation a bit in general terms, and that was it. That's what he told me. Then we went on talking about some other topics. Simply, I told him what they asked me, he told me what they asked him, and then we were waiting for the outcome of the trial. And yes, I apologize, they also asked him about the pictures that he had because he had made photographs of all sorts of things, so they asked him how come he had photographs of Slobodan Milosevic, one of himself with Slobodan Milosevic, but he also had a picture of himself with Mr. Ibrahim Rugova, so it was interesting to them, and they asked him, how come you had the one and the other? And he said, well, I was a reporter, so I made these photographs. I could do it wherever I was, and I made a photo of Mr. Ibrahim Rugova at the press conference. So that was perhaps an interesting aspect of the questions that they asked him. Otherwise, there was nothing else that was of any major importance. So more or less that was it.
And before you were informed that you had been convicted, were you allowed to attend any trial concerning any charges against you?
Ne, mi.
No, we were just informed on that occasion when these men came that proceedings were ongoing against us. End of story. We were not present at anything, nothing. And then after a while, they simply informed us that we will be released. But we did not attend anything. We didn't see anyone. We did not know that the trial was going on. We didn't know anything. We were only aware of the decision that they had taken, and that was it.
Did you ask whether there would be a trial?
Pa kada su nas obavestili.
Well, when they informed us on the 5th or 6th day, please don't insist on me saying precisely whether it was the 5th, 6th, or 7th day, but it was thereabouts. When they came to inform us, we talked for half an hour about political topics and so on, about me. They asked me about my friends in Pristina and so on, but it was unimportant. So we were informed about this, and of course we asked, are we going to attend or not? So I asked them something to that effect. when the trial would begin, whether we would be present or not, and I was told that we would have a fair trial and that we shouldn't be concerned about it. And this is all I know about the trial until the moment when we were told the judgment was that we would be convicted to 60 days of imprisonment.
And to your knowledge, was Mr. Dobricic allowed to attend any trial?
Panie.
Well, no, he was together with me for 30 plus days. Simply, the man did not attend anything. And if you ask me about the 4 or 5 or 3 days that we were not together, he didn't. He told me that he did not. He never even mentioned any trial. And we discussed the fact that we were accused, that we would be on trial, but not at any given point did he attend anything that could be called a trial, nor did anyone come to see him, except, as I said, when they came to inform us as they did. And as for the trial, we had no idea what was going on.
Before you were informed of your conviction, were you ever given access to a lawyer?
Nismo imali priliku da konsultujemo.
We had no occasion to consult anyone. The two of us were alone. There were the guards, who, as I said, brought us food, water, cigarettes. We could go out to go to the toilet, and that was the whole story. No one ever offered us to have a lawyer, nor did we attend anything that could be called a trial. We saw the men that we did see, and later on, when they came on the 14th or 15th day of our detention, they came to tell us that we were convicted. Some of them, I mean. And then, though that's an entirely different story, they told us that we were not spies and that we would be going home soon. But later on, we went on hunger strike because we wanted to go home quickly, and I don't know anything about what happened in the meantime. The 6th or 7th day, we were told that the proceedings would be conducted against us. Then on the 13th or the 14th day, we were told that we were not spies and that we would be released to go home soon. Then, after we were not released for one whole day, then we decided to go on hunger strike in protest.
If you would have the opportunity to speak to a lawyer?
Pa ne konkretno, ne.
Well, no, specifically that not. As I said, they came to see me on the 6th or 7th day, and then later on there was nobody I could tell that, only the guards who did not seem competent enough to me as people I could address. We were told that we'd have a fair trial, and that was the whole story about the trial. We expected that perhaps somebody would summon us at some point, but nobody did. The next information we got in connection with the trial is, as I told you, that we were released. Precisely so. We were not spies, we were released, we'd go home soon. And we understood that we would be going home soon. They showed us like this: you will be going home soon. We thought it would be the same day. They did not release us until the evening, and then we went on hunger strike, and that was all.
Was Mr. Dobricic ever given an opportunity to speak to a lawyer?
Ponavljam, meni nije.
I repeat, he did not tell me that they offered him anything like that. I have no knowledge of Dobricic being offered to have a lawyer.
You ever given any document describing the charges against you?
Ne, nismo dobili nikad.
No, we never got any written document about anything.
And to your knowledge, did Mr. Dobrasic ever receive any such document?
Nije.
No.
Mr. Radosevich, did you ever have any opportunity, whether they're in the context of a trial or not, to go before a judge?
Ne.
No,
And to your knowledge, did Mr. Dobrasic?
Nije ni on.
not him either.
And when you and Mr. Dobrasic were informed that you had been convicted, did you ask for a copy of the judgment of conviction?
Ne, nismo.
No, we didn't get anything either the first time or the second time or the third time when they said that we were exonerated. We did not get any document regarding any kind of decision.
To be saying you didn't receive the document, but did you ask for such a document?
Tražio sam ga.
I did ask. Dobricic was next to me, so I could also say that we both asked for it. So in any case, I asked for it on the 14th or 15th day, but I did not get it. I asked to see a paper, to see a document, whatever it was that they had decided. I did not get it. I won't repeat here what this man said to me. In reply to my asking him to provide a document, the next time I asked for the document was on the 20th or 21st day when we were already in Klečka, as I assume, because I'm not claiming that it was Klečka. But as far as I know from what I heard later on from the police, I suppose that I was somewhere in Klečka. I'm not claiming that I was, but as far as I knew it, we were in Klečka. Anyhow, there, at that time, some people came to tell us that we were convicted to 60 days of imprisonment because we unlawfully entered the territory of Kosovo and because we didn't have the press decal on the car. That was it.
Od tog.
I asked this man, whom I refer to as student, who questioned us on the 5th or 6th day. This young man came on the 21st day to tell us what I just told you. He said that we were convicted to 60 days of prison. I asked for the paper, I asked for that decision, but I didn't get anything. He said that it was wartime, that the conditions were different, and that they cannot even provide food and clothing from the ICRC, which we did get once when we were in Sedler, but that's all. I never got anything in writing, neither I nor Dobricic, except what he told us, that we were convicted to 60 days of prison. He added, Mr. Radošević, you know yourself that you won't be held here for for much longer. I said, thank you, I understand what you're saying. Okay, okay. Goodbye. Can we help you in any other way? He asked me. Then I said, yes, we are cold. And then he turned to someone, I suppose some kind of commander. And this man replied, okay, we'll provide them some blankets. We got 2 blankets, and that's the whole story. That's the end of it. I never saw the man again. Nobody ever mentioned any trial or conviction or anything else, except on the 36th day or whatever when we were amnestied.
When you were told of your conviction, were you told of any right to appeal that conviction or how you could exercise that right?
Ναι, βρίσκεται.
No, to be honest, I didn't even ask, or should I say, we didn't even ask. 60 days of prison, we go home then, super, okay. The only question was whether the 20 days that we had spent in Sedlare, those entire 20 days, whether that would be part of this conviction, this punishment or sentence. And they said yes, like in any other normal country. So we spent all these 20 days that would be taken off our sentence. We spent there another 40 days. But they said, okay, there were 40 more days. And then he said, well, but you know yourself that it won't take that long. You understand? And I said, yes, I do understand. I knew what he was trying to tell me, and it turned out he was right. So the 2 of us, we understood each other perfectly. That's it.
Mr. Radosevic, I'm now going to ask you to take a look at some video footage of your release that you have been shown before and discussed a bit in your statements that have been admitted. And then I will have some questions for you about what's in the video. If the court officer could please pull up P00093, which should not be shown publicly, and then play the video with sound from the 4-minute and 50-second mark until the 5-minute and 7-second mark.
Do you need the sound on this or just the video? Because it will be public if you need the sound. The sound will go out.
You're correct, Your Honor. I apologize for that oversight. If we could play the sound and go into private session in order to do so.
Okay. All right. So, Madam Prosecutor, please go into private session.
Excuse me, Your Honor, is there some reason we're going into private session about this video? I'm just asking you, is there some articulated reason why we're going into private session about this video?
This video is currently marked as confidential, and so if we're going to be playing the sound, we need to have it in private session.
Well, I believe the video itself is the release of these individuals, and if that's the case, then we should be revisiting the confidentiality of this video. I don't understand the reason for why it was put in confidentially. It may have been put in because the witness previously talking about it was in closed session, because virtually all the witnesses have been in closed session. But
what is the reason you want it to remain confidential?
In part because of the source of the video, Your Honor. which again, I could go into in private session.
All right. Without making a decision, we will go into private session so we can discuss this. Madam Court Officer, into private session, please. We are ready to proceed. Witness, are you?
We're in
Da,
public session.
okay, so
Yes, okay.
Prosecutor.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but we did provide the transcript of this video, which is also admitted to the interpreters to aid them should they need it. So if the court officer could please play the video from the 4:50 mark until the 5:07 mark.
Well, I think, as I say, this will be a first step, and I'm hoping there will be many more steps to follow. Why don't we get the detainees?
Mr. Radosevic, are you able to identify the two men that we could see speaking in that video clip? One in the blue jacket and one in a camouflage jacket?
Gospodin William Walker govori.
Mr. William Walker is speaking. He's the chief of OSCE, and the other person is Sokol Bashota, the UCK or KLA commander, what you will. Is that what you mean? Did you ask me about the two of them?
I was asking. And had you seen any images of Mr. Bashota prior to the day that you were released?
Bashota, Sokol.
Bashota, Sokol Bashota. That's what it's called. But never mind. Yes, I did see him, for instance, in some of the Albanian media previously. He gave some statements somewhere. So more or less I knew that it was him, and this was, though, the first occasion that I saw him personally. I had just known him from the media. He used to appear in the media, whether Kocha or Bujku, I'm not sure about that, but simply, yes, he was someone that I was familiar with. The rest of them I didn't know, or what they looked like. I knew him. Why or how exactly, I couldn't tell you, but from the media, more or less. And I know that he did give some statements for the media, and that was why he was familiar to me.
Did you see him at the location where you were released?
Samo moment, a ovoga,
Just a moment. And the other man, Mr. Walker, this was the first time that I saw him. I hadn't known what he looked like, so perhaps just to point out.
Clarification. Did you see Sokol Bashota at the location where you were released?
evo da ovde, yes.
Well, yes, here I did. I saw him there.
What I was asking is, on the day that you were released, did you see Sokol Bashota?
Da.
Yes.
If the court officer could please play the video now through to the 9:20 mark with the sound.
You with me?
Let me ask you this, the journalists here might be interested in asking you questions. Do you want to answer any questions, or would you rather just go? Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna take you back to Christina. So we've got cars, don't worry about that. Yes, thank you. My question is, do you want to answer questions from the press? Up to you.
Only
Okay, just go. Okay, good. I'm sure they're ready. Yeah, we'll be done just after you say a few words.
Colleague, we will be very brief because we wish to see our families and you will understand us. And after all, this is our story too. And my older colleague can tell you what we have gone through. How did they treat you? It was quite all right. It was mostly correct. From the beginning, from the first day, from the first meeting, it was correct all the way to the end. So, well, the accommodation was as available. Depending on the conditions, we got food regularly. What would be your message on this occasion? Well, I really don't know what message I could give out. I'm not a politician. I have no idea. Are there any other prisoners on either side? I really don't know. I didn't see any prisoners on either side. I think it would be normal for everyone to be released to go home, right? Why were you arrested? Because they told me I had entered the KLA territory, that was why. What was the trial like? I don't know that. We only informed us that we were convicted. And you didn't see the judge? Well, at least he didn't introduce himself. All right, I think it's time for us to go home.
You all set?
Okay.
Let's go.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Radosevich, do you recognize the individuals that were removed from the car?
Да, то smo...
Yes, that's Mr. Dobricic and myself, okay?
When you were removed from the car, you put on a pair of glasses. Did you have your glasses while you were detained?
Ne, vratili su mi prvo.
No, they took them away on the first day when they took us prisoner, and then I got them back on the last day. On the last day, they returned everything, our personal documents and glasses, except for our vehicle, except for the car, they returned everything else. The documents that we had, the money, everything that we had on us was given back to us, except for the car.
At the end of the video, there was a back and forth with Mr. Dobricic, where he said he was asked what his trial was like, and he said, that I don't know. We were only informed that we were convicted. Was that your experience as well?
Da, sve to vreme.
Yes, I've been trying to say that all along. I hope it's clear now. We did not have any trial, at least we did not see any. We were only informed that we were convicted to such a number of days and then that we were pardoned. So I would have said exactly the same thing.
Ask you a bit more about Mr. Dobrosic. When did you first meet him?
Kad su počeli, mogu?
Can I answer? Well, when these events began to occur in Kosovo, then journalists were sent from Belgrade to Pristina to report from there because I was all by myself. I met Dobricic in May or June, thereabouts, in the summer of 1998. He would come and go. He would come to Pristina, go to Belgrade. I didn't really follow that very closely. He is a photojournalist. I was a reporter, so sometimes we worked together. We weren't close. We didn't socialize. Whether I liked him or not, I won't even comment on that because that's irrelevant. That's all I can say about Dobricic. We're not friends, we're not pals. We happened to be where we ended up. We worked within the organization because we had to, as we would say in Serbian. That's it and good night. We weren't very close. That's all I can say.
Ever talk to you about anything in his past other than working as a photographer?
Bio je oženjen.
He was married. The man passed away. He was married. He had a son who was also a photo journalist for a while. He had a daughter. I don't know anything about them. All I know about him was that he was a photojournalist in Tanjug. I can't add anything to it. I don't know anything about him. We didn't have many things in common. We weren't close. We weren't of the same generation. We worked when we had to work together. There were people with whom I worked well. There were others I wasn't really interested in. We just had to work together and that's it. We were not close. What we talked about was you report, you take photos. We weren't close at all. We didn't socialize, but if you want to ask me about what we talked about while we were there, we talked about all sorts of things. How to bake cake, whether I was going to get married once I was out, whether all sorts of different topics. We were released, and then after that, we only met once or twice. He never came back to work, as far as I know. He never went back to Kosovo. He no longer worked for Tanjug because I returned to Tanjug on the 20th of January in 1999. So what I'm saying is that he was not sent by Tanjug to work in Kosovo anymore. Whether he went there on his own, I don't know. The next time I saw him was perhaps 2001, when I returned and worked in Tanjug. That's it.
And to your knowledge, was Mr. Dobricic ever engaged in spying while he was in Kosovo?
I have no clue. I don't know. Simply put, I don't know anything about it. He never talked about it. We never discussed that. I don't know what he was involved in. All I know was that he was a photojournalist for Tanju. I have no clue. That's the way we say it in Serbian. I have no clue. That I didn't like him, I already told you 1,000 times. I didn't have any special contact with him except where we had to work together professionally. And even this time when we went to Kosovo, we were just waiting there for Walker and his mission to arrive. They never did arrive. And then we went somewhere by Marguje or something, where he wanted to take photos there of something, that there had been some shooting a few days before the agreement was signed with Milosevic. Well, I keep going off on a tangent, but we just detoured because someone told him at the media center that that something had happened there. So he said, let's go this way so I can take some photos and so on. We got in the car. Okay.
But I think all of that is in your statements. I want to ask you, were you ever engaged in any spying when you were in Kosovo?
Ne.
No. I'm saying again, no.
And in the months or weeks after you were released, did you ever have the opportunity to talk to anyone in the Yugoslav People's Army who had information regarding your detention?
Da, znam šta hoćete.
Yes, I know what you're trying to get. In December or January, in 1998 or 1999, respectively, when I was released, for a while I stayed in Pristina, and after that, my then girlfriend and later wife, we traveled around Serbia a bit. I was trying to rest a little. I have some relatives in Niš, so we went to Niš. I can't recall whether this was in December or January. I was with my relative, Dusan Samaric, who was a general or a general colonel. I think he was the commander of the Pristina Corps at the time, something like that. I don't know if that's exactly what his role was, but he was in the general staff. So I visited him. We were related. In the 90s, he was also, oh no, in the 80s, interpreter's correction, he was the commander of the Pristina garrison. He was my mother's cousin, so we were related. I visited him in his office in Niš, and then he said to me, Nesho, just so you know, I'm glad you're well, but one guy from Sedlare was an informer for us, and he would go to Pristina, and he went to Pristina from time to time. He sold cheese in the market, and then he reported back to me that you were still well and alive. But then on the next occasion, he said, well, just to tell you about Demaci and Thaçi, Demaci said to Thaçi, hey, maybe we should release these journalists because there was a lot of pressure, both from the press and from other air sources. But then Thaçi, according to what Samardzic told me, said, I will let them go, I will release them when I decide to, not when you tell me to. That's all I heard, and that's as much as I can tell you about this man. He was a relative, he was in a high position, so he would know this about me, and why he would lie to me, I can't see. So that's what he told me, and this is what I'm relaying to you. So much.
Conversation that Mr. Thaçi and Mr. Damachi had in person, or a conversation that they had over the telephone or some other way?
Ja sam
I try to be precise. There was an intercept of a telephone conversation between Thaçi and Damachi. Damachi said that perhaps these two journalists should be released because I'm under a lot of pressure from the press and others in Pristina. And Thaçi replied that he would release us when he decides to and not when Damachi tells him to. So I assume that he meant, when he said the intercept, that he meant a telephone conversation. How else? What else would it be?
Thank you, Mr. Radosevich. Your Honors, I have no further questions.
sad sam ja.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just while Mr. Kiku is allowing me a moment. Earlier this morning, I assigned Exhibit P 492 to associated exhibit number U003855 to U00388690 at page U00388645 to U00388645. That page has already previously been admitted as Exhibit P 378, Your Honors. So with your agreement, I would vacate the number assigned this morning as P 492 and use it as the next prosecution number when they tender a document.
Thank you. Correction made. Go ahead, Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you, Ron.
Sad je okej. Njega čuje.
Mr. Radosevich, good morning. I am Gregory Kehoe. I am counsel to President Hashim Thaçi.
Good morning.
If you don't understand any question that I ask you, please, I will repeat it. If I interrupt you while you're giving an answer, I apologize ahead of time. Just tell me you haven't finished your answer because we want all of your testimony on the record. But I do apologize ahead of time if I say that. So if we can just proceed. I see from your testimony and also from your witness statement, you were born in September of 1966. Is that right?
Ja.
Yes.
Sir. Can you tell us a little bit more about your education?
Završio sam osnovnu školu I srednju školu.
I finished elementary and high school in Pristina. Sorry, the first 2 years of high school I was in Niš, and then the third and fourth year, the junior and senior years, I was in Pristina. After that, I enlisted at the agricultural college and also fine arts. The history of art, sorry, but I did not get a bachelor's degree in either. Well, I started to work, so I couldn't really finish my studies. I taught in a couple of schools as a substitute teacher. My mother, too, was a teacher all her life, so I worked as a teacher. That's about it.
You were about 18, and then and that would be in 1984, right?
Pet.
85.
85, da.
And then you were decided to go to university and you studied and you began to study agriculture, right?
Tako je.
That's correct.
Journalism, did you?
Ne.
No.
You quit your studies, right, at the university.
Pa nikad ih nisam napustio, ali
I never quite quit. Later on, I continued. But I didn't quite finish it, so I taught as a history teacher up until 1996.
After you quit, after you stopped going to the university, you then did your military service in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Isn't that right?
In 1986 to 1987 or 1985 to 86, I served in Visoko in Bosnia and Herzegovina. When I went back, I continued my studies, but from 1990 or 1991, I began teaching as a history teacher.
Finished your military service and you came back to Kosovo, you went back to the university? Is that right?
You have to answer.
upisao sam fakultet.
I enrolled previously. I had enrolled before that. I enrolled in university before I served in the army. And then in May of the next year, I joined the army for some personal reasons. And then a year later, I returned and continued with my agriculture studies. After this, I also enrolled in the history college.
School again, right?
Presto sam kad sam počeo.
I stopped when I started working as a journalist.
But you start working as a journalist in 1996. Isn't that right?
Da, mislim juna.
Yes, I think in June, whether it was in 96, whether it was on the 16th or the 6th, I can't quite recall, but thereabouts.
6, right?
Da.
Yes.
Didn't have a university degree, hadn't studied journalism, you studied agriculture and some history, and Tanyud hired you in 1996 as the reporter in Pristina. Is that right?
Da.
Yes.
At the time, in 1996, June of 1996, when you were hired by Tanyud, you were the only correspondent for Tanyud that was permanently based in Pristina. Isn't that right?
Čovek koji me
The man who hired me, George Jevdic, moved to Pristina, where he was a member of the town hall, some kind of official. And when he left, I was left alone. No matter how strange that sounds, but that's how it was.
More active in Kosovo, you were the only permanent correspondent for Tanyud in Pristina. Is that right?
Da.
Yes.
So you had no
Mislim,
writing.
po neko je nekad dolazio.
Well, from time to time, there would be people coming to report when there were some exceptional events, but I was the main contact point there, and I reported on all sorts of things.
To report on all sorts of things, and you had absolutely no writing experience, did you?
Pa nisam, ali sam učio.
Well, no, I didn't, but I learned.
Sir, that they hired you as the sole, Tanyud hired you as the sole reporter in Pristina, as opposed to someone who had had some journalism and writing experience, right?
Slažem se ja s vama tu.
I agree with what you're saying, absolutely.
Run news agency, isn't that right?
Tako je.
That's right.
Appointed by Slobodan Milosevic, the Slobodan Milosevic government at the time, right?
Pa, verovatno.
Well, probably yes. I guess that's how it goes. I think the assembly actually appoints people. I don't know exactly how it works, but yes, he was state appointed. It was a state agency.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. And if we talk about October of 1998, the Tanyud director at that time was Zoran Yevdovich, wasn't he?
Jevđević.
Yevdovich, yes.
Let me show you an exhibit, which is DHT 2673, and I'm going to show you DHT 02674, and unfortunately, I don't believe that there is a Serb translation, so I'll read it. And if we could just look at that, can you just blow that up a bit? And this is coming from a book by an individual by the name of Mark Thompson. The book is called Forging War, the Media in Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina. And in that paragraph that begins in August, it notes that in August 1996, Jovanovic was replaced as director by Zoran Yevdovich, an ardent follower of President Milosevic. Now that's true, isn't it? That the person that was running,
Dobro, da.
excuse me, let me finish.
Pretpostavljam da jeste, da.
I assume so, yes.
So the person that began to run Tanyud shortly after you were hired was an ardent supporter of Slobodan Milosevic. That's true, isn't it?
Da.
Yes? Okay.
The state-run agency, that Mr. Yevdovich was in fact a hardcore supporter of Slobodan Milosevic, isn't it?
Može tako da.
You could put it that way, yes. I didn't know it. It was a state-run agency, and the state would appoint its leaders.
As tensions began to rise in Kosovo in the mid-90s, 96, 97, 98, did your assignment with Tanya change at all?
Ja sam radio I neke druge.
I was involved in other things just as previously. I want to make it clear. I was even I even reported on agriculture, how much was sold, what type of crops, and so on. There were people coming from Belgrade, but because there was a lot of work there and I couldn't do it all, so people would come from Belgrade, like this photojournalist Dobričić. They would come 1 or 2, 3 people, depending on the occasion, but there would always be someone to come over to help because I was all by myself, but there were always others who worked for Tanjug.
I thought we were finished there. I apologize for overlapping there, Judge. And who were these other journalists that came to Pristina from Tanya during this period? Give us some names. Who were they?
Pa obični novinari koji ja što sam.
Well, journalists just like me, they would come from Belgrade, from Niš, from Kruševac, sometimes from Novi Sad. There were at least 20 of them who took turns, depending on who could come when and how long they could stay and whom Tanjug appointed. So there was a team of journalists. I wasn't the lone journalist there anymore.
Journalists that came, so we can check their work coming out of Pristina at the time. Tell us some names of these journalists.
Dobro, daću vam neke imena.
Okay, I'll tell you some names, although I don't know why that is relevant. I apologize. That's my question. Do I have to involve them as well? I mean, I don't get it. So, okay. Davor Lukač, Tanjug journalist. He was the one who came most frequently. Dejan Miljković, a Tanjug journalist from Kruševac. There were also, can't recall the last name, doesn't matter, but there were also from Niš, I mean, this was 20 years ago. These were the people that I recall. There was Vesna Pečić, who was a journalist from Tanjug, a female journalist. And then there was a person from Novi Sad. What was his name? Can't recall. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Ako se setim u međuvremenu.
If I recall, I'll let you know, but I can't really tell you right away. It was over 20 years ago.
Davor Lukic. You said he came all the time, right?
Davor Lukač.
Davor Lukač. Da.
Are you familiar with Davor Lukic's contacts and working with the Serb intelligence service?
Ne, nemam pojma.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea what you're talking about. We continued working in Tanjug a couple of years later, till 2004 or 2005. Then he moved to Fonet. he clashed with the then director there, and then he went to some other agency to work. That's it.
If I may, Judge, I think it's 11 o'clock. I mean, I think it's the appropriate time.
Witness will take a half-hour break now. You'll be escorted from the courtroom by the court usher. Remember not to speak to anybody about the... Remember not to speak to anybody about your testimony outside of this courtroom.
Okay, now.
Okay.
All right, we are adjourned until 11:30.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated. Madam Usher, please bring the witness in.
Before the witness comes in, Judge, I just neglected to offer into evidence DHTO 2673 and 2674, which are the 2 pages from the Mark Thompson book.
Any objection?
No objection. No objection.
DHT 02673 to DHT 02674 is admitted.
Your Honor, that will be Exhibit 1D51.
All right, witness, we're ready to continue with Mr. Keogh's questions.
Mr. Radosevich, I hope you got some rest and a cup of coffee. I just have some other questions for you. And just going back to your hiring by Tanyud, who hired you at Tanyud?
Interesting story. Odnosno, zanimljiva priča.
It's an interesting story. My mother heard on the radio that Tanyug had openings for journalists. And at that time, I did not have, my schedule at school was not full. It was a month of June, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to work full time in the school. And then my mother said, Nesho, my son, you're a clever boy, you're educated, you read a lot.
You at Tanyud. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Judge. I just wanted to go back to the question.
It's no problem. Just listen to the question and answer.
Okay.
Who hired you at Tanyud?
Došao sam na konkurs.
I was hired by George Yevtic, who was then the chief of the correspondence office in Tanyug, and I just applied, and that's it.
Now, when in Pristina, where was the Tanyud office?
Preko puta rektorata. Ne znam.
It was across from the university building. I don't know exactly the address. It was close to Bancos. It was downtown, in the center of the town.
And hotel.
200 metra.
200 meters.
The Serb Media Center also operated out of the Grand Hotel, didn't they?
Tako je, na prvom.
That's correct, they were on the first floor.
The Serb Media Center in the Grand Hotel?
Kao I svi novinari, strani, doma.
Well, like all other journalists, local and foreign. I mean, all journalists, Serbian, Albanian, we were all at the media center at the Hotel Grand. That was the place where we gathered, basically.
Time in Pristina, did you meet or speak with Zoran Angelkovic? And he was the head of the Executive Council for Kosovo. Did you meet with him?
Mislim da se tačno zove prvi
I think the exact name was Zoran Bakic Angelkovic, yes. He was a member of the SPS and he was the chief man for Kosovo. Yes, of course, as a journalist, I always attended the press conferences and I wrote reports like everybody else. I did my job. I knew the man.
Or speak with Mr. Angelkovic?
Da, razumio sam mogu.
Well, whenever there was a press conference, when he appeared at various events, when some opening was of some building or something. But if you ask me if we were friends, no, he was a politician, he did his job and I did mine. That's it.
With Nikola Sinovic, the Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia?
I don't think I ever saw him, but believe me, I have no idea if I ever saw him. Only possibly if he came to Pristina and held a press conference. But other than that, with Mr. Shajinovic, I absolutely don't remember that I had anything to do with him. If he possibly came somewhere, or later on, when they were no longer in power, if he happened to hold a press conference somewhere, but I don't know him, I don't have his phone number, I simply don't know the man.
Police chief, the Serbian police chief in Kosovo. Did you meet and talk to him?
Veze nemam, u životu ga nisam.
No connection whatsoever. Never saw him or heard him in my life. Perhaps I may have seen him at some point later, but down there, no, I don't know him.
With Mr. Lukic. Is that right?
Ja se ne sećam.
I do not remember having had any contact with him there. Now, whether in the last 10 or 15 years, whether I came across him in Belgrade at some point, or whether he was at a press conference about something, I don't know, but I'm not a friend of his, I don't know him, I don't have his phone number, so nothing of importance that I could say in connection with him.
There was another individual that was working with you by the name of Milovan is it Drecun? D-R-E-C-U-N? Do you know him?
Milovan Drecun nije radio sam.
Milovan Drecun did not work with me. He worked for the radio and television of Serbia, and I know him as a journalist, and he was down there in Pristina. So I worked with him later on.
Radio televizija.
Radio television of Pristina, or rather of Serbia, the RTB, the radio television of Belgrade, and he reported for them. And he was a TV journalist rather than a radio journalist.
Yugoslav army or the police when massacres were taking place throughout Kosovo?
Pazite, on je izveštavao.
Well, look here, he reported from Kosovo. Whether he had some connections with them and then took him around, I don't know. I cannot claim what sort of information he received. But that he reported from there, that he reported from the front, yes, he did. That's all over the place on TV. You can check probably any interview he did and all the rest. Generally speaking, he was a well-known journalist, and I suppose that he was in the TV news practically all the time. That is to say, the most important news show on the radio television of Serbia, and that included inter alia the reports that he sent from Kosovo. Do I know him personally? I do.
Were Tanjud reporters such as yourself embedded with the Yugoslav army or the police when they were attacking the KLA or Serb villages?
Ja sam jednom bio...
Once I, though not alone, there were several of us, journalists, one day took us to the border with Albania, Cafa Prosecutor, Cafa Dulje, one of these two border posts. Once we were somewhere near Obilić, where the military was stationed, and we went there to make a report on that. This was an official invitation from the army, sent not only to me, but all other media representatives, whoever wanted to go and whoever had been invited, to see what the army was doing there, eating, drinking, how they were conducting themselves and what they were doing, and so on and so forth. So we reported on how the troops were spending their day. On that day when I was there, near Obilić, where they were stationed, that's what I'm talking about, there was no shooting or anything that I could inform about. They invited us as they would do at any point, as they do now when there are maneuvers or exercises, and then journalists are invited. No one from Tanjug called personally on me to make a report on fighting between them and the KLA. I never had such an assignment, nor do I know that anybody else from Tanjug ever received such an invitation.
I do recall that for the Yashari massacre in March of '98, the first journalists that were present on the scene were Tanjud journalists, weren't they?
Teško, ja sam bio tad...
Hardly. I was there then. I don't know who else of the Tanjug journalists could have been there. That was in March 1998, right?
Ja tamo nisam.
I was not there, and I'm not aware of any other Tanjug journalists having been there. I simply don't know, and I doubt that we were present there.
If Tanjud was reporting on the attack in Yashari in March of '98, while it was happening and afterwards, who would that Tanjud reporter have been if it wasn't you?
Ja nisam bio...
I was not there, and it wasn't me. Whether the police and the army sent someone directly from Belgrade to the Tanjug main office, I don't know. I didn't have this information. I knew just what everybody else knew, what I could read in the papers. I had no idea at all that the attack on Yashari's compound was taking place. I had no idea, believe it or not. Now, whether the main office in Belgrade received information and in what way, nobody ever informed me about that. Whether I was not sufficiently important to know that, that's a question, but...
Court that one of the largest events in Kosovo, this Yashari massacre in March of 1998, that was covered by Tanjud, that you, the sole correspondent in Pristina, have no idea who the Tanjud reporters were that were covering that event. Is that your testimony?
Exactly.
Exactly, that's just what I'm telling you. I have no idea whether they received information about this at the main office in Belgrade and who gave it to them. I have absolutely no idea about that whatsoever. I don't know.
Mr. Radicevic, when you were in Pristina during this period of time, did you meet with the individual known as Legia? Did you ever meet and talk to him?
Ne.
No.
In the field and his conduct of his troops committing atrocities? Were you aware of that?
Ne.
No.
Committing atrocities of the field. You, as the sole correspondent in Pristina, didn't know anything about it, right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, you said that you were going in and out of the Serb Media Center at the Grand Hotel. Now, that was also the headquarters of Arkan when he was in Kosovo, wasn't it?
Ne, izvinite, ne.
No, I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question. You want to tell me that the media center was Arkan's HQ? Is that what you're suggesting? Or what?
The center was at the Grand Hotel, right?
Da, da.
Yes, correct.
Hotel was Arkan's headquarters when he was in Kosovo, wasn't it?
Kad je Arkan
When Arkan was the president or something of the kind of the football club Pristina, then his seat was at the Grand Hotel, yes.
Arkan was in the Grand Hotel in Pristina, wasn't he?
Yes.
I don't know. I simply don't know.
How about
Možda je dolazio čovjek, ne znam.
He was coming there perhaps, but I don't know.
Tanya, reporter covering events in Pristina, you don't know whether Arkan was in the Grand Hotel during the war. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Let me change the subject. How about Sheshel? Did you meet Sheshel when he was in Kosovo?
Sa Šešeljem.
I did see Šešelj. It may have been in 1997 or 1996 or 1997. When were the elections in Serbia when Milutinovic won? 97, right? That was when I saw him at his HQ or his staff in the center of Pristina. He held a press conference. That was as much of Šešelj as I saw then. The next time I saw him was in 2001 or 2002 when I started working for Tanjug again and I covered all the political parties, including Šešelj. So that was what I saw of Šešelj.
Cover Sheshel coming to Kosovo to visit with his troops?
Ne, ja to nisam.
No, I didn't work on that. I don't know. I'm telling you, there were many other people from Tanjug as well. I was not assigned to do this, so I don't know in which units of his, just to make that clear.
To your actual work during this period of time in 1996, 1997, 1998, as tensions began to rise in Kosovo. As tensions began to rise in Kosovo and violence rose in Kosovo, did your assignment from Tanya change at all?
Pa samo ih je bilo prosto više.
Well, there were simply more. I worked as previously, and there was reporting from press conferences that were held in connection with conflicts at the media center, or one of the politicians, or Mr. Zoran Angelkovic Baki, whom we mentioned. Perhaps others were holding press conferences for the press, and information that could be received. That was what I covered, and of course I had other assignments to do as well.
Did you have a particular area or a zone or location that you were supposed to cover?
Ne, nismo imali.
No, we didn't have such a division.
You have any experience reporting from a war zone?
Nisam.
No. No, how could I? No, I didn't.
Let me see if I understand where we are as the war is going on, and I'll put this to you and then ask you for a comment. So this is 1996, 1997, 1998. You are a agricultural school dropout. You have no experience as a writer, and you put in as the Pristina correspondent after you dropped out of the university at a time when tensions were rising in Kosovo. Is that about right on your status at the time?
Objection, Your Honor. I think we have to be specifying what year we're talking about. Obviously, by 1998, he did have experience as a journalist.
He can answer the question, Judge. It's cross-examination.
Overruled. You may answer the question.
Možda ponovite pitanje?
Can you please repeat the question?
And I'm putting my case to you. So during this period of time, 1996, 1997, you come to Tanyud as an agricultural school dropout, no experience as a writer, to be the Pristina correspondent for Tanyud, the state-run agency, after you drop out of university, at a time when tensions and violence are rising in Kosovo. Is that about right?
Tačno.
Right.
You were an employee of the Serbian government at the time you were in Pristina and working for Tanyud, right?
Može tako da se kaže.
Well, you could put it that way.
Let's move forward. At the time when you gave an interview to the SBO in 2019, you were an employee of the Serb government, and in fact, there was a Serb prosecutor in the room during the interview, wasn't it?
Da, bio je srpski tužilac.
Yes, there was a Serb prosecutor there. They called me to give a statement to this court.
Turn in, and if we can put this, your LinkedIn. We can move ahead. Your LinkedIn profile notes that you are a multimedia journalist employed by the Serbian government. Is that right?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Ovo šta piše tu?
What's written there?
It shows that you are a multimedia journalist employed by the Serbian government. Is that right?
Iskreno ne znam šta piše.
Honestly, I don't really know what's written in my LinkedIn profile. I have no idea. I don't know when I enter it. I could check on my mobile phone, but I don't really know. Multimedia journalist, well.
You are, aren't you?
To jesam, da.
Oh, yes, that I am right for Kosovo Online, yes.
Online is funded by the Serbian government, isn't it?
To vi kažete.
That's what you say.
Is it true?
Ne znam da ga je osnovalo.
I don't know whether it was established by the government of Serbia. I know who called me to work there, but as for who established it, I simply don't know who's the owner of Kosovo Online as such. I don't know.
And 5 and DHT 026 to 02681. And we just go to the front page. This is the first page of your LinkedIn page, and it says, you, Mr. Radosevich, federal government, multimedia journalist, March 2019 to present. Federal government. And prior to that, you have the period of time that you were with Tanya, another state agency. So is that right, sir, that you are a multimedia journalist working for the Serb federal government? Yes or no?
Well, yes, it says multimedia journalist. All right, okay, yes. Let's say that that's right. Yes, all right, I work for the government, but so what? I don't understand.
Going back.
Ne radim ja više za...
But I'm no longer working for the government. I'm left Kosovo Online in 2021. I'm working for Studio B.
SPO, the prosecutor's office, in December of 2019. You were working for the federal government, right?
Radio sam za Kosovo Online.
I worked for Kosovo Online.
As it says in your...
Dobro, okej, to je...
All right, okay, yes.
So, now you work for Kosovo Online, which is an information center for Serbs residing in the north of Kosovo, isn't that right?
Ne samo za njih, nego za čitavu...
Not only for them, but all of Serbia. Whoever wants to read it can do so. It's not an information center only for the Serbs who live in Kosovo and Metohija. It's a portal.
Sve.
So we work for everyone.
Me...
And we are also used as a source by the media in Pristina, as a source of information while I work there. And the media from Pristina, we took the statements from the ones and the others and the third and the fourth, and whoever wanted to use it and convey it could do so.
Rounding this out, so approximately from June of 1996, barring some intermediary periods in the latter 18, from June of 1996 until we say 2021, you were in the employ of the federal government, the Serbian federal government, weren't you?
Da, kad uzmete tako...
Yes, if you put it that way, yes, I worked for the government all along. It wasn't the federal all the time, but the government, the Republican government, all right.
The prosecutor a few months ago about testifying here, you had some objections to the time schedule because you were scheduled to speak to President Vučić, the Serb president, weren't you?
To ne može tako da se kaže.
You couldn't put it that way. I'm not sure how you interpreted that. I cover the president of Serbia, and that's all right.
references 114682 to 114683 at 114682, paragraph 3. And this is a note that came from the SPO after a discussion with you. You stated that the shifting decisions regarding when he would need to come testify seemed like a joke, and that it seemed like the KSC was not a serious court. You stated that the SPO was asking him to testify against war criminals but was not serious. You, sir, further emphasized that you are a serious person with serious responsibilities and that you have made arrangements to his work and life to be able to travel to the KSC. Quote, he noted by way of example of his serious responsibilities that the following day he was due to interview the president of Serbia as part of his work as a journalist. Well, that's true, isn't it?
To je tačno.
Yes, that's true. Not to do an interview with him, but to cover him because he participated at an event. But that doesn't really matter. It's all the same. May I explain what this is all about?
Thing is, you told the prosecutor, and they sent this over to us as a note that you were due to interview the president of Serbia as part of your work as a journalist, right?
Objection asked, answered.
Sustained. And one other thing, I think we're getting to the point that you need to state your case more clearly. You're obviously getting at something.
I will get something, Judge, and I am building it. It's building along.
I'd like you to state your case to him now.
If I will do it outside the presence of the witness, Your Honor, because I have some items that I want to get into first before I state my case to him, if I may.
Items. No, we're not going to remove him.
Items concerning what he was talking about concerning
All right,
Mr.
go ahead, but make it short.
Hvala.
Thank you.
Back to Mr. Dobricic. We can move ahead. So you say that you met Mr. Dobricic when? April, May, or June of 1998?
Da.
Yes.
You told the SPO, and this is in 116028, 116030, paragraph 2, that you only worked with him occasionally, right?
Da.
Yes.
That the person who would be knowledgeable about the KLA activities during that period of time of 1998 was you, right?
Excuse me, if I could just have a reference for that.
Sure. It's 070725, part 3, page 20, line 17 to 23, and it's the last 3 lines in that it should be line 21, 22, and 23. Is that right, sir?
Pitajte me još jednom, ne znam šta.
Can you please repeat the question? Because I'm not sure what you asked me. I haven't understood you at all.
Anytime you don't understand, ask me to repeat it, and I will. Thank you.
Please.
So you told the prosecutor that during the period of time when the KLA was active, that you were the person who would be knowledgeable about the activities of the KLA. Isn't that right?
Ne znam na šta se to misli.
I don't know what exactly is meant by that. I had some information about any other journalist about what the KLA was doing, what could be gathered from the press conferences, what could be read from the media, and so on. I was not an expert for the KLA. I mean, compared with Dobricic, I certainly knew much more, but I'm not sure what exactly is meant by this here.
The answer that you gave, again, counsel, this is 0725 TRET, part 3, page 20, lines 17 to 23. I don't have the Serb translation, so I'll read it to you. Question, and this is by the SPO. Who ran any bureaus or office of Tanya that were present in Kosovo and Metohija through the conflict period? Are there any names of other journalists, photographers, if you still remember, who were also working alongside you during the period? Specifically, anyone who might be knowledgeable about the activities of the KLA during that period of time? Answer, that was me. Now, did you tell the SPO that in December of 2019, that the person who was knowledgeable about the KLA during that period of time was you?
Yes, I did know more than some of the people from Belgrade. Compared to them, yes.
That Mr. Dobricic came in to Kosovo around May, well, that's when you met him, around May of 1998.
Valjda.
I guess so.
I don't want you to guess. When did you meet Mr. Dobricic?
Ne znam tačno što.
Well, I don't know exactly. Why wouldn't I tell you? How would I know whether he got there in May or June? He came just like others came before him. I don't know.
I'm not asking you for a specific date, Mr. Radosevich.
Go ahead.
Your testimony, it's approximately May or June, right?
Tako mislim da je.
Yes, I think that's how it was. It was summer, spring or summer, thereabouts.
Mr. Dobricic in from Belgrade, didn't they?
Da, radio u Beogradu.
Yes, he used to work in Belgrade.
Photographers available in Pristina to cover whatever you were going to cover as far as the war was concerned?
Tanjug ima svoje.
Tanjug had their own photojournalists. Why would they hire anyone local? They had their photojournalists and they would send them to cover certain events as needed, whether something international or in connection with Serbia or whatever it may have been.
Let us talk, but the fact of the matter is that Tanjug flew in a journalist from Belgrade to cover the war with you, right?
Tako je, čak.
That's right. Yes, it was rather me who was a kind of assistance. They dealt with this more than I did. I was more concerned with Pristina and what was going on there, and they were more focused on this, perhaps because they had more experience and all that. They were all older than me, had a longer work experience than I did, and that was it.
And who they sent when they sent Mr. Dobricic, weren't they?
And? Well, they selected him. I had nothing to do with that.
You said this morning that you didn't like Mr. Dobricic, and that's on page 39, line 11. Right?
Tako je, nije.
That's right. No.
His nickname, right?
Kića.
Kića.
That you only met him once or twice after your release, right?
Jedno, dva puta.
Perhaps twice, 3 times. But on the whole, we didn't socialize much, nor did I really care about what he was doing or not doing, so I wasn't really knowledgeable about that.
94, which is your Vice article of June 2018. excuse me, Exhibit 494. I apologize if I'm... So that should be, I do have the Serbian, by the way. It's 11425 to 114289, the ET, and the Serbian is 11475 to 114289. And the page I'm looking for is page 114287. Now, if you can look at that page, sir, in Serbian, and I realize there's a mistranslation. There is a mistranslation in the English, what I'm told by the Serbian translators, and I will highlight it now. You told Vice, in this individual that was interviewing you, on 4 June of 2018, and this is on page 114287, that, but Tanya did allow me a short break, so I spent a couple of weeks in Belgrade with my colleague Kitso, and then I had a vacation to Kaponik. Did you tell him that?
Objection, that's not what the English says.
No, that's because the English is wrong. That's what I'm saying. If you go back, tell us what does the Serb translation say, because it was mistranslated, does the Serb translation say that you told this individual that you spent a couple of weeks in Belgrade with my colleague Kitsa? Does it say that?
Yes, that's for you. You can
That's for
answer,
you. You can
witness.
answer.
Okay.
Aha, okay. Sorry, I've been reading.
Vi to mene pitate da li...
So you're asking me whether I met Kicha. We did spend this week or two on vacation at Kopaonik Mountain, and that was all. After that, I didn't see the man. We were there for a couple of weeks. Now, if this is a big problem, but I don't see what the problem is. We were at Kopaonik for a week or so, and then, as I said, bye-bye and good luck. And I saw him a couple of times later when I returned to Tanyug. I'm not lying anything here. I forgot. We were there a couple of weeks. He with his daughter, I with my then girlfriend, my future wife. And even then, I didn't socialize a lot with him, to be honest, because I was trying to go skiing. He would go away on his own. How would I put it? I don't really like him a lot. I saw him then and several times afterwards, and there it is.
Da, bio sam sa njim.
Yes, I did. I was with him for 2 weeks. That's correct. They sent us there together. I did not choose whether I wanted to go there together with him or not.
Did anybody force you to meet with Mr. Dobricic in Belgrade?
No, nobody forced us, but they allowed us to go there for 2 weeks on vacation and stay at a hotel, the yacht apartments in Kopaonik, so why wouldn't I go? And that was all there was to it.
Vacation for 2 weeks with your family and with Mr. Dobricic and his family, right?
Yes, te.
Yes, right.
Pa na Kopaonik.
To Kopaonik Mountain. It's a tourist center, a mountain.
Dobricic in Belgrade, and then you were also with Dobricic when you went up to this mountain at Kaopet.
Pa zajedno su nas poslali.
Yes, they sent us there together. I came to Belgrade, and on the following day, we were both sent there to go and have some rest, so we would recuperate from everything we had gone through.
Spent these weeks with him, and you socialized with him when you were together, both in Belgrade and up in the mountain, didn't you?
Nisam se družio sa njim.
No, I did not socialize with him in Belgrade, and up on the mountain I tried to socialize as little as I could, except what I had to if we had breakfast or lunch together. I didn't spend much time with him at the mountain. I spent the time with my wife.
During these weeks that you were up in the mountain with Mr. Dobricic, you certainly got the opportunity to get to know Mr. Dobricic and to talk to him, did you not?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled, go
Stvarno
ahead.
bez veze.
You may answer.
It really makes no sense.
Witness, you may answer the
Nisam
question.
se sa njim ništa.
I did not socialize with him in any special way or was his friend, and actually he left Kopaonik Mountain 2 or 3 days before me. I stayed longer with my wife because we had several more days at our disposal. After that, I went to visit my relatives in Niš. I already talked about that. Mr. Dobricic is a man with whom I worked together for a while. Such were the circumstances. It simply so happened as it did. They called me to Belgrade and they asked me, do you want to go for a couple of weeks to Kopaonik? And I did go there. It doesn't mean that I was sitting there all day long socializing with Mr. Dobricic. I'm telling you for 1000th time, and I repeat again, I did not really like him. I did not want to socialize with him. I spent only as much time with him as I had to. I would say, hello, good morning, good afternoon, how are you, what are you doing? Do you want to go here? Would you want to come here? I would go with my wife and go and ski and so on. All right, sorry, I apologize.
When you were back in the field in Kosovo, you spent 45 days in the field with Dobricic, didn't you? Up until when you were arrested on the 18th of October, right? 45 days in the field with Dobricic, didn't you? Yes or no?
Ne.
No. No, I didn't. I wasn't with him every day. How could I have?
Pull up, and this is 083812 to 083822 at 383813, which is the statement by the now deceased Mr. Dobricic before a Serb investigative judge in 1999. If we could bring that up on the screen. And I believe this is on the next page. And this is an interview by Mr. Dobricic before a Serb investigative judge in 1999. And I believe it is the same, the second paragraph. My colleague, Nebojša Radašević, and I were sent to Kosovo as reporters for Tanjud in the middle of 1998 to report from there on current developments. We spent 45 days in the field until 18 October 1998 and reported on various events from Jajkovica, Peja, and Kosovo Mitrovica. Now, this is a statement that Mr. Dobricic gave to an investigative judge in Belgrade. Is that true?
Svaka čast gospodinu Dobriciću.
Well, this is not very honorable of him. This is not true. This has nothing to do with reality.
Ovdje
I never spent 45 days with Dobricic anywhere or anytime.
ovome što ovdje piše.
From what it says here, it appears like I went all over Kosovo with him and sent reports.
45 dana i ja sa čovjekom.
The only thing is that is true is that I had only met him 30 days or so before. We did not spend this much time together.
So,
Maybe we were together one time or
Judge, that you spent 45 days in the field? He's lying to the investigative judge?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness doesn't know what Mr. Dobricic told.
You might want to rephrase that.
Absolutely, Judge. So when Mr. Dobricic told the investigative judge that we spent 45 days in the field, you and he spent 45 days in the field, was that true? Or not?
Nije govorio istinu.
No, he wasn't telling the truth. And here's another thing. What does it read here? My colleague Nebojša Radošević and I, as Tanjuk journalists, were sent to Kosovo in mid-1999. How could somebody send me to Kosovo when I was living in Kosovo? So that testifies to his truthfulness. And if we want to hold on to every single word that he says, how could I be sent to Kosovo when I was living in Kosovo? So?
Spending 45 days, you're saying that that was not true, right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
It's not the truth.
You got your answer.
Yes. Were you told Mr. Radicevic that the SPO wants to introduce Mr. Dobric's statement into evidence for its truth? Did you know that?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Asking if he knows.
It's unclear how the witness's views on what the SPO is doing is relevant.
That's sustained.
Let's move on, sir. He says here that you went to Jajkovica. Did you and Dobricic go to Jajkovica?
Đakovica, I think that we did go there, and I think it was when we went to visit the Glojane Lake. I guess that's somewhere in the vicinity of Đakovica. So it's possible that we went out into the field to some of these places, but 45 days I wasn't together with him at all. Probably he had in mind that he spent 45 days there on the whole, but I wasn't with him for 45 days continuously. It's possible we went to Đakovica when we went to Glojane. I guess that was at about that time, but that's as much as I can say with any precision.
Dobricic, did you drive?
Ne, ja ne vozim.
No, I don't drive.
Mislim da nas je...
I think that we were driven by, if he was there, whether he was a reporter of a Blitz or another. There were four of us in the car, and there was somebody else who was driving us. We were not in a Tanjuk car, and he was not the driver. There was somebody else together with us. There was a convoy, and I think that we were going to this lake in Glojan, and that there were 5, 6, or 7 vehicles with escorts, and that was it. So we were not going in our car, and he was not the one who drove me.
Tina.
Nemam pojma koliko ima.
Well, I have no idea how much it is from Pristina to Đakovica. So 2.5 hours, probably thereabouts. I don't know, 2 or 2.5 hours. There was a convoy. I have no idea how long we were driving. Really, I don't know. I don't know.
Sure.
Otkud znam?
How would I know that? I have no idea what I talked about with Mr. Dobricic then, or if I talked with him at all.
With Mr. Dobricic? Pay or Pech?
Ne sjećam se.
I don't remember.
Pro-
I don't remember. I simply don't remember.
No ne sjećam se.
And I especially don't remember having gone to Kosovska Mitrovica.
So with Mr. Dobricic?
Kažem, ne sjećam se.
Well, I told you I don't remember. I don't remember having gone to Kosovska Mitrovica at the time at all.
To neću da se sjećam.
It's not that I do not want to remember, but I just don't know. I don't remember having gone to Kosovska Mitrovica in that period. I told you where I did go. I did go to Čafa Prušit or Čaf Dulje. I did go to Roševac. That's what I do know. Once we went to Šar Planina, whatever that was about, and I mostly covered events in Pristina, not what was happening all over the place.
Traveled with Dobricic to these various locations. You traveled in a car, right?
Pa rekao sam, da.
Well, I said so, yes.
Opportunity to speak with one another during that period of time, didn't you?
Pa tako, valjda smo nešto.
Well, yes, I guess we did have some conversation.
You were on the road with Mr. Dobricic, weren't you? Didn't you?
Nekad jesmo, nekad.
Sometimes we did, sometimes we probably didn't.
The fact is, and I will put this to you, you had plenty of time with Mr. Dobricic to talk and learn about Mr. Dobricic before the 18th of October, right?
Da sam imao vremena, da.
Did I have time? Yes. If that was your question. Did I have time for that? I did.
With multiple conversations with Mr. Dobricic, you realized that Mr. Dobricic was a hardcore Serb nationalist, didn't you? And that he had been in war zones such as Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina. Isn't that right?
Ne.
Is that subject never came up at all. Is that right?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer the question. Let
Znam.
me answer.
Okay.
Okay. I know that he worked for Tanjug. I know that he did go to various war zones, but where exactly he went or didn't, I don't know. Whether he was a hardcore Serb nationalist, I have no idea. He never declared himself, nor did I ask him about that, nor was I interested in that. I know that I myself am not a big nationalist, so therefore I don't really raise this issue that much, and I didn't discuss this with him at all. So I mean, please, as for Dobricic and his political convictions and all that, what does that have to do with me? I really don't get it. It's his own thing, his political conviction. I don't know what he was or not. Okay, please go ahead.
Full well that Mr. Dobricic was a Serb nationalist that was brought to Kosovo with a photographer's cover in order to get information about KLA movements in the field, and you were there to help him. Isn't that right?
Ne.
No. No, it's not right.
You were well aware, well, by the way, you were listening to matters concerning the opening statement in this case, and you were aware of information that there is evidence of Mr. Dobricic's involvement in war crimes in Bosnia-Herzegovina and in Croatia, right?
Ne znam.
I don't know.
Didn't you? Didn't you, after you saw what had been shown during opening statement by the defense? Didn't you call the SPO and say that you were upset because he saw a program about Thaçi and he talked about a screenshot and that you were going to send a screenshot to the SPO, right? Do you remember that? Don't look at them. Don't look at the prosecution. That happened, didn't it?
Ne, gledam nego ne.
No, I'm looking, but I'm not sure what you're asking me about. What screenshot? I've no idea what you're asking me.
Your comments to the SPO, and this is at 112748 to 112750, and I'm reading from 112748 to 49. This is the interpreter. Interpreter asked to speak to you, and the people from the SPO introduced themselves, and you stated that he was upset because he saw a program on television about Thaçi et al. At trial, that he stated that he would send a screenshot of what he saw, and he would wait for a call back to discuss. You disconnected, and shortly thereafter sent the screenshot, and the screenshot was a screenshot of the defense opening. Did you do that?
Moment.
Just a moment. That's not.
Aha.
Aha. Yes. There was on the radio television of Serbia, whether it was in the news, and I saw that they showed one part of the indictment where it's noted that the two Tanjug journalists were arrested or kidnapped, and I recorded it, or I made a screenshot and I sent it to them so they could see that the indictment was publicly broadcast. You know what I mean? Yes, right. Yes, I know, I'm aware now of what you're talking about.
Because this was a public airing in the opening statement of evidence of Mr. Dobricic's involvement in war crimes. Isn't that right?
Objection, Your Honor. There's nothing in this statement in regards to that.
Never.
It's just a question.
No.
Finish your objection.
Ne.
No.
Because there's nothing on that topic in this document.
It notes that he was upset. Then he would send a screenshot.
Doesn't say about what he was upset,
That's
though.
the point. That's cross. I'm not saying what he's upset about. Well, you're upset about the fact that all this evidence.
Oh, you're telling him. Ask him.
Okay. Weren't you upset because all
It's a question. Ask him a question.
weren't you upset about all this evidence coming out concerning Mr. Dobricic's involvement in war crimes?
Ama gde
Where on earth do you see that? I was upset because the radio and television of Serbia showed that two journalists, that is to say only in the indictment where it's noted, the two Tanjug journalists and so on and so forth, it has nothing to do with anything else. I simply informed them that this was mentioned that we were mentioned and that the indictment was mentioned in the public service, the radio television of Serbia. What on earth does Mr. Dobrić have to do with that and my being upset?
Did that twice.
Your Honor.
Let's move on.
Well, let me put to you the evidence that was produced, and then I want to talk to you about your conversations with Mr. Dobrić in his role as a tenured photographer. And if I can first turn to DHT 02025 to DHT 2029, and I'm looking at page 2028 to 2029. And I'm going to read you some of these items because it's not in Serbian, and then I'm going to ask you some questions and put some questions to you about it. The first is a report from Simo Rosic, dated the 11th of March of 1992, and gives some additional information. And this is a report, but it's encompassed in a statement by Ari Kirkkanen, an ICTY analyst with the Office of the Prosecutor. And I believe it's in page 42 of this document. That's it at the bottom there. Now, this is Mr. Kirkkanen writing a report at the ICTY, and he's quoting a Simo Rosic. He said, a report by Simo Rosic dated 11 March 1992 gives additional information. According to this information, the group that committed murders was headed by their commander at the time, Zoran Tadic. And besides him, murders were committed by Serbian volunteers, Kico, should perhaps read Kico, Pizer, and Zoran Dondor. In this report, Kico has been identified as Kico Dobrić, a tenured journalist and a hardcore Chetnik, and a member of those organizations. RSK State Security Service Department in Bankovac, in its report on Vladimir Dobrić, aka Kica, gives more information about the killings in Skrbina. The report states that Vladimir Dobrić came in October along with a group of volunteers from Serbia. With other volunteers, he joined the unit for a special purpose at the staff of the Territorial Defense. The report further states that due to criminal activities and murders committed, especially near Skrbina, where they killed tens of civilians, it was decided that this unit be closed down and that the mentioned group should be expelled from Bankovac. The report also names Ljubica Vucevic and Zoran Dondor, aka Yaro, belonging to this group. Vladimir Dobrić, Ljubica Vucevic, and Zoran Dondor are listed on the payroll of the 2nd Platoon of the Territorial Special Purposes Unit in November of 1991. Dobrić reappeared in the region in March 1992, trying to arrange arms supplies to the Serbs in Bosnia. I also want to show you another report from Serb Internal Security, and that's DHT 02030 to DHT 02043. And the English is at page 2, and the Serbian is at page 2 as well. It reads as follows. Dobricic Vladimir, called Kitsa, appeared in this area in October of last year, along with a group of volunteers from Serbia and Bosnia-Herzegovina. Dobricic claimed to be a newspaper photographer of Tanjud and had a certified newspaper identification card. However, he expressed his wish to join the units of Bankovat's territorial defense as a volunteer. Therefore, along with the other volunteers, he joined the unit for a special purpose at the staff of the Territorial Defense, or TO, excuse me. This unit took part in almost all the battles led in this area. The group of volunteers gathered around Dobricic gained the reputation of criminals for a short time. Criminals who were abusing their participation in battles to carry out robberies and often even murders. Besides Dobricic, the following persons stood out. Vucicevich Lubisha, Don Dozoran, a person with the nickname of Yaro from Ilyas, and several persons whose names we don't know. Due to the criminal activities and murders committed, especially in actions near Skarbrinia, where they killed tens of civilians, it was decided that this unit be closed down and that the mentioned group should be expelled from Bankovac. And at that time as well, the service had information that Dobricic and others were engaged in the resale of seized arms from military sources, and looted goods. At the request of the military police of the Territorial Defense staff, searched the hotel premises where the mentioned persons were living. According to the report, the military police did not find anything. Now, all of this information that is set forth, is it your testimony that Mr. Dobricic never mentioned the fact that he was a radical fighter involved in fighting in Croatia, that he was smuggling arms, and that he was operating during this period of time under the cloak of a Tanjud photographer, and that he was a hardcore Chetnik? At no point throughout all of your conversations did Mr. Dobricic or anybody else bring any of this information to your attention?
If we could just get clarification about the period of time that you're talking about.
Anytime.
Not that it was mentioned, but that the allegations and here, the documents that you showed to him.
Anytime. Did Dobricic mention any of his activities of operations in Croatia, gun running in Bosnia-Herzegovina, murders in the Republic of Serb Krajina, any of that? Did he mention any of that?
Ne.
No. As I've already told you, the man he looked kind of suspicious to me, and I did not like him.
Another event involving Mr. Dobricic, who was a fighter with Šešel's Seljevici. And let me show you this document, and this is DHT 02044 to DHT 0247. It's an intelligence report. And if we go to page 4, intelligence report from the security organ of the J&A Security Administration with more details on the killings in Skarbrinia and Nadin in Croatia.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has just stated categorically that he doesn't know information about this.
Sustained?
Well, I mean, did you know about, you said that you knew about the Mr. Dobricic's son. Does that be Masha?
Ne znam u ime, znao sam.
I don't know his name. I just know that he was a photojournalist. I think he too was a photojournalist. I think so.
Aware that Masha was likewise fighting in Croatia under the guise of being a photojournalist?
Dajte, molim vas.
Come on. I have no clue. I don't even know about this guy. How should I know anything about his son? I have no idea. I heard that he had a son when we were with his daughter, and that his son was a photojournalist, and that he gave a statement to some journalists talking about what his dad told him about how he had fared where we were held by KLA.
That he looks suspicious, but you continue to work with him, is that right?
Pa?
So
the answer to that is yes.
Da, naja,
yes, of course. Of course, he did his job and I did mine. The job that I had done 5 to 10 years prior to that.
That he was in, you know what Ilyash is, do you not? Out of Sarajevo?
znamo da postoji mesto ili...
I know there is a place called Ilyash somewhere in Bosnia.
He was working with Sheshel and Sheshel's group when they were operating out of Ilyash. Did Mr. Dobricic tell you that?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, this has already been asked and answered.
It has not been answered.
You can answer the question.
Yes or no? Did he tell you that he had been involved in Sheshel, the Sheshelavici, with Sheshel, and they were operating out of Ilyash? Did he tell you that?
Ne, ništa mi je to.
No, he didn't say any of that.
Apsolutno.
Absolutely not.
Attention to you know who Ratko Mladic is, right?
Dobro, da.
Well, of course. From his diary, this would be DHT 2270, DHT 2270 to 2666. And the page I'm looking for is on 2390. And this is a page from his diary on 24 March 1992, on the eve of the war in Bosnia.
Can we get the number again, please?
It is, the page I'm looking for is 02390. It's 2683 to 2684? I guess we made an excerpt this morning, my apologies. This is an excerpt from the Milosevic diary, where he notes about Vladimir Dobricic Kitsa, 46 years old, from Bankovac, 81 2023 from Bankavans, ringleader in smuggling of weapons. Do you likewise know nothing about Mr. Dobricic's activities of the ringleader in smuggling weapons?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
And I said this was the Milosevic, it's the Mladic diary. Your Honor, I just have
Doesn't
to
make
put-
any difference where the information came from. He said he denied that he knew he was a smuggler.
Yeah, I understand. I just have to put this to him. I, beg the court's patience on it, but I have to put this to him. And I will put the case to him right now. Mr. Radesovic, I'm putting this information to you about Mr. Dobrich because you know very well that Mr. Dobrich was a violent extremist nationalist. And you ate with him, you drank with him. you
Objection,
talked
the
to
counsel
him.
has already put
Excuse
this
me,
to the witness.
Excuse me.
Counsel has already put this to the witness.
Putting this case to this witness. You ate with him, you drank with him, you talked with him many times, you vacationed with him, and you're asking this court to believe that he never revealed his nationalistic views or the fact that he had been a combatant in 2 prior wars. That never came up even once. Isn't that a fact? Is that your testimony?
Tačno tako.
Exactly.
Truth is that you and Mr. Dobricic went out on the day in question and were taking pictures for Serb intelligence and gathering information for Serb intelligence. Just as Mr. Dobricic had done in Croatia, just as Mr. Dobricic had done in Bosnia, he was using his tenured credentials as a photographer to hide his true identity as a combatant, as were you. Isn't that a fact?
Nije tačno.
It's not a fact. It's not true. At least not in my case. As for him, whatever.
Driving through KLA areas that you didn't have a press sign on your vehicle, did you?
To je tačno.
That's true.
Hoćete da mi kažete da svako vozi...
Are you going to tell me that every press vehicle has a press sign on it? We didn't have it.
Why you didn't have anything on your vehicle designated that you, when you were driving with Mr. Dobricic up through KLA area, why you didn't have anything in your vehicle, on your vehicle, to identify you as a member of the press?
Prosto nije bilo oznake.
Simply, it wasn't there. And again, I can just repeat, not every vehicle, press vehicle, has a press sign on it.
When you were stopped by the KLA, you attempted to conceal your identity, didn't you?
Nije tačno.
It's not true. We said that we were journalists, and we gave our IDs. We provided everything they asked for.
Agree with me that Mr. Dobricic didn't reveal to the KLA all of his activities, wartime activities in Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, didn't it?
Pazite ovako.
Well, look, while I was with him, I don't know that he told them anything about it. Whether he had done that in those 10 days when he was not with me, I wouldn't know anything about that.
Came up to the checkpoint when you saw the KLA soldiers when you came back, you told Dobricic to run, didn't you?
Da okrene kola pa da vidimo.
Well, I told him to turn around the car so that we should head back. We went through their checkpoint, and I said, turn around, let's go back. Where are we going?
KLA soldiers You told Dobricic to run, didn't you?
Da se vratimo nazad.
Well, to go back, that's true. Because where would we go forward? Because it was obvious we were going to their territory, the KLA territory. So I said, let's go back, and then whatever happens, that's it. That's true.
Dobricic, when you came back around to the KLA checkpoint, did you or did you not tell him to run? Yes or no?
Ne, pa
No. They were standing in front of us. Where would we run?
A document that is an interview of Mr. Dobricic's son. This is DHT 02667 to DHT 02671. And I'm interested in page 2671. What's that? Is it? And you can turn to page 2670, please. Back one more, I think, please. And just scroll up a bit. That's at the bottom of that page. And this is Mr. Dobricic's son giving an interview. And he notes that at the time of his capture, Vladimir Dobricic had several photos on him, inter alia, of Ibrahim Rugova, Venton Soroy, but he also one that he always carried in his wallet. It is a photograph with Slobodan Milosevic, and my father thought that they had survived precisely because of that photograph, which seems rather illogical. The moment they realized that they were facing the KLA soldiers with balaclavas, Nebojša shouted, "Run!" And my father stopped the car. A commander who spoke Serbian came up to him and said, "Had you gone 2 more meters, you would have been shot. Now get out." Now, is this a fact that when you came up to this KLA checkpoint and you saw these KLA soldiers, that you told Mr. Dobricic to run? Yes or no?
Ne.
No.
Da, to tačno nije.
That's right. It's not true. Whether his son wanted to make his father out as a hero, that's a different issue, but this is not true. There was no mention of any run or anything like that. The man came up to us, he asked for IDs, and that's how it went.
The prosecution's document on this, which is P300, which is dated the 29th of October and bears the heading Military Police Directorate of the Kosovo Liberation Army for Media, statement number 3. P300. Now, this notes that on Sunday, 18 October of this year, at around 1500 hours, the Kosovo Liberation Army military police met a Yugo, Florida vehicle with registration plates from Belgrade near Magura village without press signs, with the driver and passenger Vladimir Dobricic and Nebojša Radosevich. After the sign was given for them to stop, they stopped after a delay, allowing them to hide their identities. This also led to doubts about their identity, that is, not believing that they were journalists and that the purpose of their visit was espionage. They were stopped and were sentenced to pretrial detention for the purpose of investigating their real identity and the purpose for their travel. Now, let us break this down a little bit. Now, you were, in fact, driving a Yugo vehicle with a Belgrade place without a press sign. That is all true, right? Right?
Da.
Yes.
Sign was given for them to stop. They stopped after a delay. Now, you acknowledge that you drove past the KLA checkpoint about 500 meters and then turned around and went back to that checkpoint, right?
Tačno, ja.
That's right. That's right.
Turned around and went back to the other checkpoint was because you saw another checkpoint down the road. Isn't that right?
Nismo vidjeli nikad.
We didn't see any other checkpoint down the road, but it was clear to us that we were wading further into the territory of the KLA. So what would we do further in there? So we decided to just turn around and go back.
Da stanemo I stali smo.
The people said that we should stop, and we stopped.
Let me look at your proofing note that you have given to the SPO, and that exhibit number is P493, if I'm not mistaken, Counsel. It's at page 2. You clarified that instead of 8 to 10 KLA members at the checkpoint, there were around 15 to 20 in total, with 8 to 10 of them on the side of the road where they were stopped, and an additional KLA members at a location further up the hill. Is that right?
Da.
Is that right?
Da.
Okay.
Yes.
The first checkpoint, and then you see there is another group of KLA soldiers on the road ahead of you, and that's the reason why you turned back, right?
Ne.
No. We went through the first checkpoint. On the right-hand side, we saw those people. They were there. We went some 50 to 100 meters, and we turned around to go back because we could already see that up ahead there was a village of some sort. We realized that we were heading into or through KLA territory, so we turned around and went back.
Witness, it's time for the end of your testimony today. You'll need to be back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Remember not to talk to anyone outside of the courtroom about your testimony. The court usher will escort you out of the room.
Whilst that's being done, once we've returned to open session, there's one minor issue of housekeeping I'd like to raise on the public record.
I think we are in open session. I think we are in open session.
I think we will be. Oh, we're in open session now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think we, go ahead, please.
No, this doesn't relate to this witness. It relates to the witness who is due, I believe, to testify tomorrow morning, when this witness's evidence is concluded. I don't know whether Your Honours have yet had a chance to cast an eye over the proofing notes for the witness, but may I, perhaps in advance of tomorrow, invite your attention to the second proofing note, that is to the preparation note, which contains a description of the witness's, I think there's no other way of describing it, attempts to negotiate something from the prosecution prior to giving evidence. And it's between paragraphs 1 and 12. There is then a discussion about what has been promised to him in the past and what has not. and there is a very clear conflict between what he says was promised to him and what counsel Mr. Patch says was promised to him. In other words, nothing. But you have a situation here where the witness has expressed a desire to negotiate a particular package. And the first 12 paragraphs raise an issue which I know in the US and UK jurisdictions would raise questions for as to the appropriateness of counsel who is leading the witness being potentially a witness himself in direct contradiction to the evidence that the witness is likely to give in relation to these previous discussions. In other words, a straightforward conflict of fact between Mr. Patch and the witness. And certainly in the UK, and I believe also in the US, having checked the procedure, whether it's called professional embarrassment or otherwise, counsel cannot call a witness in relation to events which will be the subject of examination where counsel's recollection may result in counsel being a witness himself. And so I'm putting that on the record now. I'm not asking to argue it at this stage, obviously, but I would ask your Honour's attention to the first 17 paragraphs of the proofing note and put on record that I would invite the SPO and Mr. Patch to consider that question overnight, what implications there might be in relation to it, because getting to the bottom of what lies under paragraphs 1 to 17 is going to be a significant part of my cross-examination, and with the consent of my colleagues, I'm leading in relation to this witness. Secondly, the second half of that section, 13 to 17, raises some very real difficulties, because the witness is saying the position
Your Honors, we're in public session.
Okay, now we're adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow.
All rise.